We
How
think
are you?
pretty good. We thank you so much for getting up early out there on the West Coast for us this morning. We're recording this for our all of our STEM students in Madison County Schools here in Mississippi.
Uh-huh.
Who's Vicky Parks at Germantown High School, Tammy Sharp at Shirley Simmons Middle School, and my friends Jatoria Kirksey and Angela Reed at Old Town Middle School. So this will be seen by a lot of our STEM students, and how appropriate on Black History Month to have you with us after your amazing publishing feat.
I appreciate that. Thank you. How do you pronounce your last name? Piggott?
Higgett.
Paget.
Higgett, like
Piggott. Okay,
yeah.
thank you. Thank
And I
you.
just think it's also crazy how small the world is that my friend Shalika Powell, who spoke with us last year, knows you, and she used to live in Jackson. So it's just crazy how small the country really is.
Well, I actually don't know Shalika. I think her friend Ashley knows me. And yeah,
That's still crazy.
it is. Yeah, it's definitely a small world. So yeah, awesome. And how many students are logged on like right
I have
now?
10 with me right now.
Okay.
And we got
Okay.
questions we'll get to later too, but we got all 9th and 10th graders with me right now.
You said they're 9th and 10th graders?
I have all 9th and 10th graders with me.
Okay, that's good to know. And this is for your STEM class?
Yes, ma'am.
So what exactly do you cover in your class? Just curious.
Well, we do have a lot of speakers come in from across the country. We've had them from Texas, Chicago, right here in Mississippi. We've had environmental engineers, civil engineers, computer people, just all walks of engineering and STEM careers, to let them know the possibilities and for young Black kids, and we also have Spanish speakers that'll watch this later as well. And just to introduce them to the different types of careers. And right now we're on simple machines and circuits and basic physics before we get into Newton's law. So that's what we're in right now.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I had a question. Oh, so I'm gonna talk about. I just want to make sure it's appropriate. I was going to talk about how STEM careers, they can often lead to high salaries.
Absolutely.
And I just think that it's good. That's good to know as a high school student. So I'm going to say that. But
we really put the college career readiness. So we really want them to know the pathways.
Okay. Okay, good. I didn't want to but I think it's appropriate for high school students to know what a salary they can expect. So, but yeah. Okay. Okay. Perfect.
And if you want to share your screen, you are able to. I know you said you had a short presentation, and we'd love to see.
Are we live now?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Hi, everyone. I was over here just chopping it up. My bad. Okay.
Everybody.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and start sharing then.
Fine.
Okay. This is my first time sharing a PowerPoint, so let me know how it. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay. Just a moment. What about now? Can you see the slides?
I can.
Okay, perfect. So good morning, everyone. Sorry for the delay. I didn't realize we were live. My name is Sarah Higgins, and I'm an attorney, and also I used to be an engineer in a past life. And right now I'm also an author of a children's book. And so your teacher, Mr. Pygod, he invited me to come and speak to your class. And so I'm just very excited to be here today. I understand that you guys have some questions, so I encourage you to ask questions or chime in, use the chat feature, whatever you can, just to make sure that I want to hear your thoughts. So please don't feel shy to chime in.
Good questions we're going to get to. I've got them all already prepared for you.
Perfect. And so I'll answer a question about anything, my life, my career, anything at all. So nothing is off limits. And so first, why STEM? Why should you choose a career in STEM? Let's be practical. We all have to make a living for ourselves. We all have to provide, for our families. And the reality of the situation is that STEM, the field provides a lot of opportunities beyond a lot of other job, fields. And so, for example, the US will need somewhere around 1 million STEM professionals within the next 5 years. So after you guys graduate from college, there's going to be a lot of job opportunities for you. And so this represents nearly 11% growth compared to less than 8% for all the other industries out there. And then of course, STEM, the pay is pretty competitive compared to other professionals. So the average salary in the US is $51,000, but an average engineer makes $79,000 a year. And this is a low estimate. It can vary by your specialty, whether you're mechanical, electrical, civil, chemical engineers also make a good amount of money. And then of course your location. If you live in California versus another state, you might make a little more money, but on average, it's around $79,000 a year. And then a research scientist, they can make an average of $78,000 a year. And of course, a doctor, as we all know, they can make 6 figures at the average salary of $200,000 a year. Oh, sorry about that.
We actually had last week we had a chemical engineer in Texas, and the week before that we had a research scientist from Irvine, California, that's from Mississippi.
Awesome.
So we've seen both of those, and they didn't tell us how much they made, but they let us know they pretty well.
So, I mean, I'll be frank with you. So after I graduated from college, I was an IT consultant, which I'll get into later. My starting salary was $64,000 a year, and that's out of college. Wow. And so I was making considerably more than most of my friends. And so it's something to think about when you're thinking of like which career to sort of go into, is how much will I make? I mean, like I said, we have to pay our rent and whatnot. So that stuff is important to know. And just even beyond all the numbers, as you all know, the STEM fields contain some of the most essential workers in our society. STEM folk, they build our bridges, they design our technology, they develop medical advancements, just to name a few. So beyond just
and this is the big manufacturing area here. So we have manufacturing here, so that those engineers are at a premium here as well.
Yeah, and I've read some statistics were saying that there's more jobs than qualified individuals, and so something else to keep in mind. You will be in high demand if you develop the right skill sets within the STEM fields. And so, being that it's Black History Month, I'm going to go over a few Black trailblazers in the STEM fields. This is just a smidget, a small sample, as I'm sure you all know, of Black people who have just contributed to our society. And so on the far left, we have Dr. Mae Jemison. She was the first Black woman in space in 1992. And then on the far right, we have Mr. George Washington Carver, one of the most prominent Black scientists of the early 20th century. And he was an agricultural scientist, a botanist, and he really tried to promote alternative crops to cotton because as you might know, cotton, it really depreciates and depletes the soil. And so considering that Black folks, there are a few generations out of slavery when Mr. Carver was doing his research, he wanted to figure out what were some ways alternative crops that the South can grow beyond just cotton. So he looks into potatoes, tomatoes, and of course the peanuts, as we all know that he's famous for developing over 100 ways to use the peanut. And then in the middle on the bottom is Dr. Shirley Ann Jackson. She was the first Black woman to get a PhD from MIT. And she also invented the technology behind caller ID in long distance phone calls. So every time you see, your mom or your dad calling you on the phone, you see your caller ID, you have to thank a Black woman for that because she invented that technology. And then moving in, to the 21st century, we have Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett. She's a viral immunologist, and she led the team that developed the COVID vaccine that Moderna eventually, distributed and sold. And so we have a Black woman to thank for helping us to get, advance ourselves within the pandemic. And we can just sit here for hours talking about other Black people who excelled in the STEM. This is just a few of them. And I just wanted you to understand that Black people have been contributing to developments in science, technology, engineering, and math since the dawn of this country, and we continue to do so today. So just a little tidbit. But despite the Black people that I highlighted, we are still very much underrepresented in the STEM fields, as I'm sure you all have discussed over the course of your curriculum. And so Black people make up 13% of the population, but only 9% of bachelor degrees in science and only 3.9 in engineering are earned by Black students in college. And then compared to white folks, Black folks, when they do decide to major in a STEM field, they will switch out and change majors 40% of the time. So almost 1 in 2, Black students will switch out of STEM. And that's something that I experienced, with a lot of my colleagues when I was an undergrad. A lot of them would just switch out to a different major. And there's a number of reasons for that. We can get into that later. And then even upon graduation, only 3% of engineers are Black, 4% of scientists are Black, and only 6.4% of healthcare professionals are Black. And so we still have a long way to go to close that gap. And hopefully some of you all, when you graduate from high school or wherever you are, you decide to help, fill that gap. And I didn't have a STEM class when I was in high school. And so I'm glad that you all are having opportunities that I didn't have, just to increase your exposure to the STEM fields. And so I'm just really happy to see that, the next generation is getting more exposure, because like I said, we need your talent to help further advance our country and the world. And so I just wanted to highlight some student organizations that kind of cater towards, create a community amongst Black students. And so despite the low numbers that you might see, depending on where you go to school, know that you will have a community if you choose to go this route because of these organizations. And so I listed a few organizations on the screen. I was involved in NSBE, the National Society of Black Engineers, when I was an undergrad.
Yeah, and NSBE has a huge presence in Mississippi.
Really? That's awesome. Okay, good. I'm so glad that you guys are familiar with this already. I'm not really, I'm just happy to hear that, because I didn't really.
Jackson State and HBCU both have large NSBE chapters, and I went to LSU for grad school, and they also had a very large NSBE chapter.
Awesome. Yeah, NSBE is actually the largest student organization in the country. And so I'm just really happy that, they're reaching pretty much every corner of the country. That really makes me happy to see. And so, as you may know already, NSBE provides, networking, conferences, job opportunities, internships, academic support, community service opportunities. And I think the most important aspect of NSBE in any Black organization is it provides a home, like of like-minded students. You'll develop lifelong friends if you were to join one of these organizations. So I definitely encourage it. And regardless even if you go to an HBCU or even like a PWI like I went to, these organizations, they just offer a place for you to develop your skills. And so I just highly encourage it. And speaking of HBCUs, these are a few HBCUs that actually have really good STEM programs. And this is not an exhaustive list. I just wanted to highlight some of these because as you may know, there's many corporations who are now partnering with HBCUs for job training programs. For example, Google, they recently granted $5 million to 10 HBCUs to help support scholarships, invest in technical infrastructure, in-class and remote learning, and just develop a curriculum to sort of advance the HBCU STEM pipeline. And so right now, currently, over 27% of African-American who study the STEM fields, they do so at an HBCU. And so there's just a really rich history of producing influential Black scientists, doctors, and engineers out of HBCU. For example, George Washington Carver, who we just covered, he was a professor at Tuskegee. So all of his research that he did was out of an HBCU in Alabama. And even my brother, he went to Tuskegee to study in mechanical engineering. And so you don't have to leave the South or go very far to get a good education from an HBCU. Like Mr. Pike just mentioned, Jackson State, they have one of the best STEM programs in the country, and they're in your home state. So you don't have to look too far.
We're in the Jackson area.
Are you really? Okay.
And I'll let you do this. Jackson State right now has the only 3D weather simulation lab in the country.
I didn't even know that. What do you?
Yeah, they just developed it. They had the meteorology program there.
Okay.
3D weather simulator.
Okay, that's awesome.
We had a speaker who went to Prairie View last week, chemical engineer. He went to Southern University in Baton Rouge, then went to Prairie View. So he went to 2 HBCUs, and now he's a chemical engineer in Houston. And he said with the connections you can make in one of these cities, he was able to get a petroleum field immediately.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that you're covering HBCUs, and I'm just really happy to hear that. So yeah, don't overlook them at all. And so let me give you a little bit of my background. So I'm from Los Angeles, California, where I currently live. And I went to the University of California, Berkeley, which is in Berkeley, California. Again, I didn't really have a lot of exposure to HBCUs during high school. I kind of wish that I did. And so, but anywho, I ended up going to PWI Berkeley in California. And I don't really have any regrets because it was a great experience for me. And so when deciding upon a major, I did a little bit of research. And I realized that I did like math and science in high school. And so I just wanted to see what kind of majors I can pick that just led to the most job opportunities and, just the most opportunity in general. And then I saw that engineering, like I mentioned before, offers, a good salary option coming out of school. And so I decided to pick industrial engineering and operations research. And so, or IOR as we call it at Cal. And basically IOR it's essentially applied mathematics, I would say. It's one of the soft engineers. And so when I say by soft is that all of the systems and the programs that IOR majors develop, they're not tangible. So it's as opposed to a civil engineer who will build a bridge, or a mechanical engineer, he might build a robot, or a chemical engineer, she might, develop some sort of, chemical compounds. An IOR or industrial engineer, they don't make anything that's tangible. Everything that they make is a system. And so, for example, as I was matriculating through the program, I ended up getting a job at General Electric for the summer, a summer internship in Louisville, Kentucky. And I was working in a home, really it was like a water heater manufacturing facility. And so as an IE, what I helped to do was try to find efficiencies in the system so that the water heater was developed in the fastest and most efficient way possible. And so that's not anything that's tangible, but I suppose it directly affects something tangible, which was in my instance.
Well, people said similar things about it's not always the tangible stuff; it's about the efficiency and and let's be honest, the profitability as well.
Exactly. How can I make this product cheaper and faster, but not compromise on the quality? Absolutely. That's a lot of things that IE professionals will do, and this can expand even beyond manufacturing. For example, an IE, they might help an airline figure out at which price point should I sell the tickets to make a profit, And so just developing systems of efficiency and how to maximize profitability while, minimizing risks or, inefficiencies, that's what an IE will do. And so that's what I did in undergrad. And that led to a job I got at Hitachi Consulting in San Francisco, California. And so as a consultant, I was an IT consultant. And so that meant, again, going back to the non-tangible product, I helped to develop software solutions for different corporations that kind of helped them better manage, their inventory, their procurement, again, just manufacturing heavy sort of stuff. And so as a consultant, my job was actually a full-time traveling job. And so I was living in Oakland, California, but I would travel, for example, to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And then also I went down to Springdale, Arkansas for about a year and a half too, because I worked out of Tyson Foods, helping them with some of their really just chicken manufacturing essentially.
Tyson has a big presence here as well.
I'm sorry?
Tyson has a big presence in Mississippi as well.
Do they? Okay, awesome. So I'm just happy that you all are so familiar with all this stuff. So, but yeah, so that's what I did. I worked as a consultant, again, with different corporations, helping them to develop efficiencies. And so, however, I decided to make a switch. When I was about 24, I decided to go to law school, just kind of switch it up altogether. And so, and I kind of just decided to pivot. And I just kind of wanted to tell you all, you don't have to stick with just one career path. If you decide, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a computer programmer, but maybe down the line, I want to be a journalist. That's okay, And so life is short, but careers are very long. And so you don't have to understand and fully comprehend what you want to do as, a 15-year-old or a 14-year-old or a 17-year-old, because I surely didn't, And so, but I am grateful for my engineering background, because I will say that engineering and just science in general, it helps you to sort of break down a problem into smaller chunks, and it helps with your comprehension and your critical thinking skills. And so, which are really helping me as a lawyer, So, so yeah, don't be afraid to switch it up, to pivot, it's okay. But again, I do think that even if you decide ultimately not to pursue, a full-time career in STEM, training behind it is invaluable. That's just my opinion.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And so while I was in college, I was volunteering at an elementary school in Berkeley doing science projects with Black and brown kids in the after school program. And I realized that they oftentimes did not see another like student of color who looked like them doing science with them. Like that was just, it just really lit up their face. And so a few years after I graduated from undergrad, I decided to write a kid's book, a children's book that features Black women who have contributed to society through the STEM fields. It's called Stemming from Blackness. It's on Amazon.com. And so I'm actually really proud of this book because in many ways it's sort of autobiographical in this, or a little autobiographical, because it's about a young girl who finds herself, a young Black girl who finds herself struggling to complete her math homework, and her mom sort of tells her about all these Black women who have achieved in STEM to sort of encourage her to stick with it. And in many ways, it's like my own experiences, because like the character in the book, I had a teacher when I was in 4th grade who essentially told the class that men or boys are better than math than girls. And so that's sort of hearing that from a young age, it can really affect a child's development and also affect how she views herself and her abilities. And so thankfully I had a mom and I had other people in my life who, sort of corrected that, misdirection about boys being better in math than girls are. And so, but I know that a lot of women or a lot of young girls will hear that growing up for whatever reason. And so I wrote a book to sort of combat that false narrative that Black people or that women are not as good in science or technology, engineering, and math than other races or other genders may be. And so throughout the book, I highlight a few trailblazers, some of which I highlighted before, like Dr. Mae Jemison and Dr. Shirley Ann Jackson, just to again encourage young Black kids to pursue these fields, because like I mentioned, we as Black people have been contributing to these fields since like the dawn of the country. So yeah, that's why I wrote a book about it. So I'm very proud of it. And so that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to share them. But I just wanted to say during Black History Month, Black history is American history. We as Black people, we built the country. So take ownership in America because it belongs to you. So yeah, Black history is American history. I will say that.
Yeah, 100%. And before I get to the kids' questions, I had a couple myself.
Okay.
I mean, if you want, I told them before you got on, if you want to feel stupid, just look at your resume. It's quite impressive. And you were actually quite humble about it, which is, impressive in itself. But like you said, you did go to a PWI, but UC Berkeley is one of the most prestigious schools in America.
Yeah.
And then NYU is one of the most prestigious law schools in America. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat that. So, how much harder did you have to work being a Black female? I mean, I don't know your background, but how much harder did you have to work being a Black female to be recognized for such prestigious programs?
It was hard because, like I said, like these programs, like both the programs itself, like engineering and law, are underrepresented when it comes to Black people. So, in both programs, I was one of few. There was some classes where I was the only Black, student in the class. And so what I tried to do is I sat in the front of the class, for example, just so I can seem and be more engaging. I didn't want to be the person that never showed up to class. And so I just kind of always felt that I had to, make my presence, not necessarily known, but let them know that I was serious about my education. So I sat in the front of the class, I asked a lot of questions. And was it difficult? It definitely was, especially when it came to finding study groups, I would say, because people tend to flock to familiarity. And so meaning that, the white kids will study together, the Asians will study together. And so having to infiltrate that group was difficult at first, but, once I started to make more friends, it became a little easier. And like I said, with NSBE, I was able to find, study groups through NSBE as well. And even some other minorities, there's definitely Latino organizations that cater to STEM as well. So it was challenging being the only one. It gets lonely, to be frank. It's definitely lonely, but I understood that, my presence was important, and your presence in of itself is like an act of resistance almost, because again, you're bucking the stereotype that Black women can't do these things. Yes, we can. So yeah.
Absolutely. And we are an all Black school, but we have several kids that go to PWIs. But I think it's important, especially in the South, to know that there are all kinds of student organizations that can, even if you are a minority in your program, that there are professional organizations that get involved, student organizations that get involved, and then even if you don't go to college, there are community organizations as well, to where you would have that networking and that camaraderie. The other question I have, and I fight this fight with them every day, in the engineering process. We've got some great students in here, and most of them have really good grades, but they want to quit every time something gets hard, and they think, I can't figure it out the first try. In engineering, how often do you actually get it right the first time?
Like never. That's why they make eraser, pencil and eraser. So there was, I can't even tell you how many times that I struggled to get this algorithm right, or get this physics question right. It's a struggle. These disciplines are not easy, but they're not insurmountable. I will say that. That's why you get paid a good amount, because it takes a little bit of grit and a little bit of dedication to achieve it. But so I would say, if and when you do find yourself not getting it right the first time, don't quit, because so many, the people that I just mentioned, like George Washington Carver, he developed so many failed products with the peanut that were never successful, or they just didn't work, And so you won't be the first one to face adversity or to face setbacks. And so just understand, if they made it through, so can you. But yeah, I couldn't even count how many times I got something wrong the first time. But there's also, especially when it comes to the STEM fields like science, there's really no failure, because it's you just find another way that didn't work. If you're trying to develop a patent for something, or even, for example, the vaccine, I'm sure they went through several rounds of testing that didn't work. But again, it's not a failure. It's just finding another way around that, that setback. So
yeah, and that's why in the engineering design process, which is part of the state STEM curriculum, it has the step where you fix what you already did. So so it's basically guaranteeing that it's not going to be right the first time. But I do want to some of these questions, and these are all really good. This first one is Jay Ashton Williams. He's in 9th grade, and he asked, what led you to write your book, and how would you explain the process to other future writers?
That's a good question. What led me to write it was I just saw a gap. I saw a need, and I wanted to fill it. I saw that, like I said, firsthand, I used to be a young Black girl who was discouraged or otherwise told that I couldn't do certain things because of my gender, because of my race. And so I just wanted to create something that sort of countered that narrative. And I thought, kids are really impressionable, and what you tell a kid when they're young affects them for the rest of their life. And so I knew that if I were to get a hold of Black kids early, that would just change the rest of their life. And so that's why I decided to write this book. And the process was actually kind of long, only because when I wrote it, maybe a few months after, I decided to go to law school. So I wrote the manuscript. I researched the different women that I wanted to highlight. I wrote a manuscript out. And then, like I said, I decided to pivot. And so I went to law school. So I took a break for about, 5 years to go be a lawyer and whatnot, and to go achieve that goal, take the bar and all that. And so I put it to the side, but I knew that eventually I would have to, produce it at some point in time. And so funny enough, I was actually just scrolling on Instagram, maybe back in 2018, 2017, after I graduated from law school. And I saw an ad, how sometimes when you're scrolling through social media, you get an ad that it's I never even Googled it, but I thought it. And so that's kind of what it was in that situation. I thought about, I need to finish my book. And so I saw an ad for an editor, and I reached out to her, and I was like, I wrote a children's book, but I need to cross over to the finish line. I need to get an illustrator. I need to help, with editing and formatting. So she helped me to, find an illustrator to illustrate the drawings. Because again, all I had was the text. I didn't have anything else but the text on a Word document. But she helped me to develop it into a book, and I sold it on Amazon. And so my journey to authorship was 7 years, from original thought to actual, a finished product that people can purchase. but I took a little detour. So, go become a lawyer, I would say. So yours doesn't have to be that long. And there's so many resources out there to help you develop whatever idea you have in your head. But that's just my journey to being an author.
That's awesome. This is ninth grade, and she asked, "Do you think your younger self will be proud of you in your book?"
I would hope so. I think that she wouldn't be able to recognize herself. I would say like I didn't, for example, I didn't go to undergrad thinking I was going to be an attorney. I went there to be an engineer, and I was an engineer for a few years. And so I think she'd be surprised that I sort of switch it up. But I think she'd be proud of the fact that, I decided to do so. And so yeah, I think that she'd be proud of me. But again, she would not be able to recognize me. Yeah.
I think that's pretty impressive as well. One on the Pacific coast, one on the Atlantic coast. This is Alonzo Johnson. He's also in ninth grade, and he asked, "What was the motivation for you to become a lawyer?"
That's a good question. I think it was maybe Thurgood Marshall. Someone said that a lawyer is a social engineer, and so in the sense that they help to craft a legal system in which we can all find justice or whatnot. And so I decided to be a lawyer, because I really wanted to help people develop or to navigate difficult problems in their lives. And so people go to a lawyer when they have an issue, and so I felt that as a lawyer, I could have a more tangible impact on a person's life. And I also honestly found it to be intellectually challenging and stimulating to me. And so again, I decided to switch it up a bit. But yeah, I found that the law was a little bit more interesting to me as an individual than what I was previously doing. So I decided to go another route. But yeah, that's me. But honestly, I just kind of took a leap for it. Again, I didn't really plan it out. The thought dropped into my head when I was 22, 23. I was on this other job, being a consultant, like I previously talked about. I decided to just go with it. And so I didn't think about it too much. I just kind of did it. And so, but yeah, that's kind of why I decided to. I just wanted to have a different, intellectual challenge, I would say, and the law definitely provides that.
Now, watching later, that being an attorney is not like Law and Order. It's not just nailing somebody on the witness stand. That's 1% of what attorneys actually do. There's a lot more that goes into it. Everybody sees the courtroom dramas, which is fun, but that's a very minuscule percentage of attorney work. This is Brian McMurtry. He's in 10th grade, and he asked, "What is the overall message you were trying to give to the reader?"
Just to achieve, just don't give up on yourself, I would say. So I think what anyone can find sort of relatable in the book is that we've all been told, or we've all at least got in our head that I cannot do this, right? But if you just had a little bit of inspiration and motivation and understanding that, I'm not the first one to try to solve this problem, or I'm not the first one to face adversity, that's kind of what I want to get out the book. I think that it can be applicable to any race, any gender, any age, because we all face challenges and we all face sort of naysayers, both externally and also, I think more prominently internally. We often tell ourselves, I cannot do this. And so, but again, if we just have some sort of inspiration and motivation and really discipline, we can achieve whatever we set out to do. So that's kind of what I want, the message that I want to set across in this book. Beyond just that, Black people can do anything. It's more so about you can do anything that you set your mind to, sort of thing.
Absolutely. This is Reginald Cooper. He's in 10th grade. He asked, "What do you think it will take to finally close the gaps in these careers?"
Oh man, that's such a big question that I don't have all the answers. I do not. I think it starts with what you all are doing now. It starts young. It starts with exposure and opportunity from a very young age. Because again, studies show the more funded your school is, the more funded your community programs are, the better that child is the more likely the child is to succeed in other parts of life. So it starts with programming at a very young age. It just, again, getting exposure to various types of careers, various types of industries. So this opportunity from a very young age is how I think it's going to start or close the gap. And then also it's going to take you to close it, to decide that I'm going to, increase the number as an individual as well.
Yeah, and this is Maya Dixon. She's in ninth grade, and she asked, "What is something that I can do now that would motivate me to not give up?"
To not give up?
Yes.
I would say that's a really good question. Um, I think what motivates me to not give up is to know that people have already people have like fought hard. When I say people, I mean like Black women have fought hard to give me opportunity that they didn't have. Like, for example, like my grandmother, the first job that she had was she was a domestic worker, right? My great grandmother, that's all that she did. That's all that she did for a living was, to clean houses. And so I think what motivates me is knowing that I had opportunity, I had access that they did not have, and people fought very hard to give me this access. And so when I'm feeling discouraged, when I'm feeling, defeated, which happens, especially now that I'm a lawyer, I just remember that I'm here because people fought hard to give me this opportunity to be here. And so let me not waste it. So George Washington Carver, and people back in the day, Black folks, they can only make a living with their hands, right? We can make a living with our intellect and our brain. And this is only a few generations behind us. And so I just try to think about, again, people fought really hard to get me here. So let me just stay here and, achieve.
Yeah, and I'm glad. I'm a big believer in, you hear a lot of, and obviously I'm on the outside looking in. I mean, I'm not stupid, but one narrative that I hear from the Black community sometimes, not all the time, is that the only way I'm ever going to be successful is to play sports, and that is so far from the truth. Right. There are more and more opportunities and more companies looking to hire minorities, but at the end of the day, you have to put in the work and you have to know the opportunities that are there and make the most of them. It's not just, oh, if I'm not an athlete, I'm not going to make it in life. That is so far from the truth, and I think you're an example of that. And we are almost out of time, and we thank you so much for getting up early this morning on the West Coast and joining us. You are just such a trailblazer and just so incredible. And just like I said, one of the most impressive resumes, and it's just amazing how humble you are about that. But before we go, I do want to ask you, even though you are on the West Coast and you've lived in New York, you've lived in the Bay Area, and now you're in LA, it doesn't matter where you are. Being Black in America is going to be hard no matter where you are. Mm-hmm. We have a room full here of Black students. A lot of Black students are going to see this later. Some Hispanic and Asian students are going to see this later, and some non-minority females are going to see this later. But your message really does apply to everyone. So, what can these young people do now in 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, or some are being the 7th and 8th grade when they see this? What can they do now to become as successful as someone like you has become?
I would say read. I think reading is very underrated. But pretty much anything that you want to know is found in a book. And so I would say read more than you scroll. Like, we spend a lot of time on social media, which can also be beneficial, but I would say read more than you scroll on Instagram, more than you scroll on Facebook, more than you make a TikTok video. Read, and also develop good study habits. And so whatever that looks like for you, like if you're someone who needs to speak out loud to learn something, then speak out loud. If you're someone who needs to hear it, then, hear it, And so develop good study habits, be an avid reader, just be intellectually curious from a young age. Always ask questions like, well, how does that work? Why does it work like that? And so like I'm on Wikipedia daily trying to figure out who this person is or how something works, or I'm always looking up words in the dictionary. And so I would just say be an active and lifelong learner, be an active and lifelong reader, and develop good discipline when it comes to studying. These are things that you can do these things as a young, student now. That's what I would say. And then stop procrastinating too. It doesn't help. But yeah, I can go on and on, but I think I would just say those things.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said stop procrastinating, because one thing I always say, and this applies to everyone, and including myself, because I changed careers at 30. You changed careers at 25. So nothing in your life will change until you do something about it.
Right.
So, there's been people that have come from way worse circumstances than me and you have ever become, that have become extremely successful. And woke up one morning and said, if this is going to change, I got to do something about it. So you have 100% agreement from me on that. And that would apply to any person, any gender, any color. At the end of the day, you have to forge your own path.
Yeah. And I think people talk themselves out of things by saying it's going to take too long to achieve it. The time is going to pass anyway. Like, law school takes 3 years. Engineering degrees, 4 years, that time is going to pass anyway. And so you might as well just do what you set out to do and don't be too caught up in how long it's going to take, because hopefully you're going to live throughout that time anyway. So just do it. Don't talk yourself out of it.
Absolutely. And Stemming from Blackness, available on Amazon. It's got great reviews. I mean, that's the most positive reviews I've ever seen on a book in my life. So,
oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Overall consensus is that it really can apply to anyone. And I'll be looking forward to getting my copy to have for future. And we thank you so much for joining us. Just such a great message. And again, thank you so much for getting up early out there on the West Coast for us today.
No problem. This has been a pleasure. I'm going to go start working my job now, but I definitely appreciate you reaching out to me, Greg. And it's been a pleasure to speak with your students today, and hopefully they're inspired and motivated to, achieve what they want to achieve. So thank you.
Awesome. You're living proof of it.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Have a great rest of your day. Good to meet you.
You too. Bye-bye.
See ya.